Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for this discussion about integrating ESG criteria into insurance and investment processes, and about some of the challenges of trying to pursue a more ethical approach to doing business. My name is Lindsay Anderson. I'm the Head of Research and Insight at the EIU, and I'm delighted to be joined for this discussion by Mario Greco, Chief Executive Officer of Zurich Insurance. Thank you, Mario, for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm very happy to be with you today.
So to start with, I mean, your industry, the insurance industry, has for a very long time been seeing the very direct impact of climate change on its customers. So to start with a very big question, I suppose, based on that experience, what do you consider the priorities to be in terms of addressing climate change?
First of all, it has been clear to us in the insurance industry since a while ago that the climate is changing, and is changing before the actions we're taking. And so we need to speed up our actions to compensate for this climate worsening. I think we set targets which are very far away in time, and time is critical now. The second thing is that, as many have already said, I mean, lots of words have been said, lots of speeches have been made, but not enough actions have been taken. And what we see is that the transformation of the different industry into sustainable industries has just started, and we need to accelerate that, and we need to go much further into reshaping the way we produce the goods and reshaping the way we consume things.
So just building on that, you talked about speeding up there and accelerating. We obviously are very aware, there's a lot of momentum around the long-term targets, 2050, net zero. How do businesses need to sort of chunk up that goal and take action, today, tomorrow, next week, to make sure that long-term goal doesn't become unachievable in the meantime? And what does that look like practically?
Yeah, the issue that we're not resolved yet is that today it is still, I would say, convenient to pollute. I mean, there is no cost of pollution. So if you have a production system which has been creating a lot of carbon in the planet, that is quite cheap for you to keep on doing that. Or the transformation to something which will put the carbon back in the ground instead of, letting it free in the air, is something which is going to be very expensive, and many companies are not prepared to pay that. This is why I've been advocating since long ago for a real carbon price, which can make then the price mechanism incentivizing these sustainable behaviors by companies. And this has not happened yet. The transformation will not be easy. My industry, insurance, is a lucky one because we don't produce a lot of carbon, and so we should and can speed up and become not just carbon neutral, but even carbon positive as quickly as possible. But other industries need to significantly invest, reshape, and this is going to be tough for them. And this is where a price incentive is absolutely necessary.
And I think, building on that point and the kind of potential for incentives or regulation, businesses obviously are trying to stay ahead of regulation and kind of manage the transition in a more orderly way, as opposed to the more, perhaps abrupt management that might come around with the introduction of legislation. Where do you sort of perceive the insurance sector to be on that kind of curve in terms of staying ahead of regulation versus the business, the corporate world at large?
Yeah, the most complicated thing for us is what to do on underwriting, and then the next one is what to do on asset management, on investing our funds, our assets. Underwriting is especially complex because there are lots of industries where either the transformation target is very far away on time. And so today you should continue underwriting businesses which show no movement to transform themselves, or businesses where we still don't understand precisely, we don't know precisely what the transformation should look like. This is the old discussion, for example, on the supply chain component in bringing along carbon to the final goods. And there's still relatively little understanding of what is the supply chain contribution. Equally, on asset management, we start having information on the carbon components of the investments that we make, but this is still very imperfect. And there are assumptions which are kind of heroic to believe they're right. For example, that anything related to government debt is carbon neutral. Seriously? I mean, can we really believe so? Clearly, that is not the case. But how do we understand and quantify the carbon present in some of our investments or in many of our investments is still not clear today.
So that's obviously a sort of common refrain, that one of the barriers of kind of introducing ESG criteria or ESG data systematically into investment processes or underwriting processes is very difficult because of the sort of quality of the data or the kind of agreement around regulatory standards. I mean, have you seen progress, or is this something that you still consider to be a major problem?
No, absolutely. I mean, progress is visible. Now, let me also say that I don't think it's just a problem of lacking data. I think it's also a question of lacking understanding. I mean, do we fully understand where is the carbon produced, and are we able to capture that notion and make it visible in the final data that we look at? But yes, progress is clear, progress is visible. Then the question is, can we go faster? Because time is running, and the planet is clearly showing the pain of what we have been doing before, and we're not changing, at the necessary speed yet.
So, I mean, building on that point about progress, I mean, obviously the idea of trying to take a more criteria-based approach to investment or to insurance is seen as a kind of a powerful tool in terms of encouraging businesses to change or to adapt faster and sort of accelerate that process to allow them to access finance or engage certain services. But a lot of the businesses that do badly in terms of a criteria-based approach, do badly in terms of the data, they are some of the businesses that probably have a lot of the expertise or know-how, technological or engineering know-how, in terms of helping to ultimately address some of the climate problems that we're facing. I mean, how do businesses need to walk that line in terms of acting ethically now with regards to their investments versus, keeping the door open to some of those who might have the answers? How do you approach that problem?
It's a very difficult solution, and it's very difficult to approach that problem because, I mean, the only real solution I know, based on my education, my culture, where I'm coming from, is that prices should do that. Now, in order for prices to do that, it is needed that carbon is priced in. And today, only 20% of prices have some carbon information embedded in their values. 80% have not. So, in absence of a pricing solution that makes carbon paid by consumers, by the buyers, and so if you want to be cheap, you need to get rid of that carbon. Companies do not have the market incentive to aggressively go for the transformation. And so thinking that we can solve this without the price, I struggle to understand how we can do that. And it's not a question of asking people to be ethical or to be forward looking or to be responsible. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we have to perform according to economical reasons, and the economical reasons are price driven, price based. And this is what I haven't seen yet resolved. And individual companies like ourselves take action. So we've been canceling, for example, clients. Over the last years, we decided to exit ensuring sectors of industries. But to be honest, this is a very selfish decision. It doesn't do any good to the society. It doesn't trigger a real transformation for better. It just goes in the direction of what we feel is right to do. Um, we need prices to convey the information to the buyers such that then the industries, the companies will be forced, will have a real interest to transform themselves into sustainable ones.
Okay. And just going back to this point about how you make the decisions about sort of how and where to act ethically and what the motivating factor is behind that. I mean, clearly all of these actions, whether that's something around choosing not to underwrite a certain industry or whether that's a sort of internal action to reduce emissions, they have quite profound ripple effects on your stakeholders. So that have ripple effects for your suppliers, your businesses, your employees. As a business leader, I mean, how do you approach that problem of considering where to take action and the ripple effects for your stakeholders and what the right kind of I guess targets are to put on those actions to balance the ripple effects with pursuing the change that you need to achieve?
Yeah, what we try to do is to talk and advise um, the customers, the companies that we insure about what sustainable for them can be, should be. We created a couple of years ago an internal team was working especially on sustainable service or resilient service as we define them, and they advise companies about what we think is the path to sustainability for themselves and their industry. And we try to discuss, to talk, to maintain an open door. The last resort for us is just to walk away. And as I said before, this is a very sad one because we know that if we walk away, then the customer will simply find another insurance company, and so we have not, succeeded in moving the customer, in moving that company to transform themselves. And although the decision is needed, as I say, this is a sad one. We see a lot of interest for that. We have triple-digit number of companies that we're working with on sustainability, transformation, and path to improve their resilience. That's a very good sign. But as I said before, we need to go faster. Time is running.
So, I mean, in the interest of time, it's interesting to sort of pick up on a couple of things you've said there. I mean, you've commented on a couple of the decisions that you've made based on considering them to be the ethical thing to do. But in terms of the wider industry, that there isn't a market incentive. I guess I would be interested, just as I guess by way of a kind of closing remark. I mean, what do you think is the main source of momentum, in your industry or in the sort of corporate world at large at the moment that is driving ESG considerations? I mean, is it operating ethically for your customers and your employees? Is it fear of regulation? Or is it that people are starting to see the potential for superior, market returns or financial returns of operating this way? Are you seeing a difference in different industries?
Yeah, the last one you mentioned. So the possibility of looking at superior returns is the one that we need to create, and where we need the help of governments to make that possible. And that is the one which is today not visible. Then you have industries like, for example, the food industry, where there is a lot of pressure from consumers, from the buyers of the products. They want the products they buy to be sustainable, and they're concerned about what they eat or what they buy for their needs. And so there you have a market pressure already, which is moving the food industry for the better. But not everywhere you have the same customer pressure. And this is where I'm calling on governments, I'm calling on stakeholders to take the proper actions for that. Um, and lots of industries understand what's happening. For us in insurance, this is very visible. I mean, we saw the damages created by the climate. We see the people suffering for that. We try to fix it as much as possible, but fixing does not mean that we eliminate the root causes of it. It's just fixing the consequences, and the root causes are the ones that now we need to attack, and real actions there are needed.
I mean, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our time. It's obviously such an important and enormous topic that we could speak for much longer. But thank you so much, Mario, for sharing such fascinating insights with us. And thank you so much also to our audience for joining us. Please do stay with us for our next session, which is due to start shortly. Many thanks.